Converse belt by this time. That was a whole hour. So,
I don't think 12 probably, but.
No, but
Anyway,
okay, that's ambitious,
an
I guess.
unspecified time after midnight. I think it's close after midnight, but it is never actually specified. Clint and Brian run into one of Clint's friends named Meredith Reed, who then gave them a ride back to the Ugly Tuna Saloona.
Meredith is a guy, correct? I believe, because I mean, Meredith is one of those names that can be a male or a female, and I'm pretty sure it was a guy and not a girl. But
Oh, really? I always thought it was a girl. Yeah.
Well, see, I was like, oh, it must be a lady, but then a bunch of stuff that I read gave me the impression that it was all the guys going to the last bar.
Really?
This is very odd. Here's what I'll tell you is I watched the crap out of the surveillance
And
tapes.
you can't tell.
Well, and I can't. Well, the surveillance tapes are really good, but Brian is standing in front of Meredith,
Right.
and
So you can't
and walking,
tell.
and so you can't actually tell. So I.
How tall is Meredith, do you think? Do you
Well,
get
I
the
don't know.
impression of?
That they are standing on the step below Brian, and Brian was 6'2", so I don't know, not taller than 6'2" plus 5 inches.
Okay.
So I'm
Not sure.
not sure.
Okay. I believe it's a guy, but again, I'm not 100% positive because there's so much weird reporting on this one.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is I've never seen it. I don't think I've ever seen it specified. I'm like racking my brain.
Okay.
So I'm really sorry, everyone. I'm going to admit there's a lack in my research.
Sorry for
I,
causing the brain spasm.
Yeah, but
I actually think it probably is a female type person, just simply because I have an eye for this sort of thing. Like if like say on the Wikipedia page, Meredith would have been referred to at some point as him or he or something like that.
And
No.
yet
And that would have
Meredith was
jarred
my
never
brain.
referred to
It
in
never
any
is.
way on the page.
Never
That's
does.
the problem.
it's either
All of the
Reed
reporting.
as in the last name or they
Well,
as in the he and
group.
or she that person and Clint.
It's
Okay.
always very gender non-specific
Yeah. All right.
is what's bungling all
Yeah.
of this.
well,
for us.
we're gonna make Meredith into a girl here, I think.
I think we're just gonna call them Meredith and Clint.
We're gonna let Meredith stay gender non-specific the
Yeah.
way Meredith likes it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Anyway, Meredith gave them a ride back to the Ugly Tuna Saloona where they all planned to end their night, then go home. Brian reportedly got separated from Meredith and Clint at this spot. The bar closes at 2 a.m.,
Normal, yeah.
which is normal. So Clint and Meredith figured they'd wait outside the only exit from the bar, and they'd find Brian in the crowd exiting. When they didn't see him, they assumed that when they'd been separated from the bar, Brian had just left without telling them. You know, he couldn't find them or whatever. The next morning, Alexis tried calling Brian but couldn't get a hold of him. His phone went
That's
straight
Alexis, his girlfriend.
to
right?
Alexis, his girlfriend.
Yeah.
She said his phone went straight to voicemail. She just assumed he was, sleeping it off, and so she tried it again later.
Yeah.
Finally, on Sunday, when she still couldn't get a hold of him, his phone was still going straight to voicemail. She called Randy, Brian's father, to see if he had heard from him, and he hadn't, so they then called the police. Reporting varies on this. According to Alexis, on some news reports that I watched, they reported Brian missing Sunday. Wikipedia says that Brian was reported missing on Monday after he missed the flight to Miami. I don't know which is true. I would tend to believe Sunday,
I know it was at least a day or two.
but it was a couple days at least.
It
Yeah,
took a couple of days.
yeah.
And by the
Because
way,
Friday night was the night that.
and this is something this is not outrageous, but I think it's a little odd that Clint didn't call him the next morning and just say, "Hey, what the hell, dude? Where were you?" Just to see that he's all right. You know?
Well, I don't know that he didn't. Clint is like after that night. Clint is
He
just
won't say anything, I know.
disappeared. Yeah, he won't say anything.
I think Clint just tried to protect himself from the court
yeah.
of mass negative appeal.
it doesn't necessarily mean he's guilty of anything. No.
Yeah.
But,
No.
yeah.
Either way, Columbus police did get the missing persons report, and they acted, and totally reasonably. First, they checked with local hospitals and homeless shelters to make sure he hadn't shown up any of those places like you would expect them to. That would be, the first place you would expect them to check.
Right, because did you? Well, I mean, people don't understand why the cops do that because if somebody gets, let's say, whacked on the head and gets a concussion, they can be in a weird state. Remember, there's that for us in real time. the report of the guy who was on the East Coast,
Yeah.
went skiing,
Oh,
apparently
yeah.
took a tumble, and they found him a week later in California in the
Yeah.
same clothes with no memory of how he got there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why. But people are always like, why'd they check those places? That's why.
Well, the
because-
hospital, just because, I mean, he could
Well,
be
but, like,
unconscious in a
homeless
hospital, but a
shelters and-
homeless shelter, anywhere that somebody could be warm and get services,
Right.
pretty much they're going to check because for whatever reason, that's where they're going to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From there, so obviously Brian was not found either of those or any of those places. So then from there, the investigators starting to put together a timeline, basically the timeline we just talked about a minute ago of what Brian had been doing. The only additional detail that Clint and Meredith were able to provide is that they thought they'd seen Brian chatting with the band.
Yeah, and I thought that I read in one place, again, you read in all kinds of different accounts, but he had said to them, hey, I'm going to go talk to the band, and that's the last word they heard from him, is he said he was actually going to go chat with them.
Yeah, I don't know how much.
And being a musician, I'm not surprised. I heard that they were this was late, and they had actually stopped playing, and they were starting to break down.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe he just wanted to go talk about guitars for a little bit.
Or whatever. Yeah, I don't know if Brian said that to them or they just saw him over there or what, but it does seem that Brian was chatting with the band at least at one point.
Mm-hmm.
When interviewed, the staff at the Ugly Tuna Saloona were totally unable or unwilling to provide any helpful information, though it seems they were reasonably cooperative.
It was a bar full of people. How are you going to
On the first night of spring break.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a
Yeah.
zoo in there. So
Yeah.
I mean, I had the same
Yeah.
thought when I saw the footage with the security guards. Like, those security guards here. No, they
No.
just saw a billion people come
Yeah.
screaming through.
Yeah,
They got no
and
idea.
realistically, Brian isn't an insanely.
He's not
He's not really unique looking. Yeah.
I mean, he's a good-looking guy, but
He
He's
didn't have
he's
a
not
horn growing
remarkable.
out of the middle of his head, so
No,
he
not
stood
at
out
all.
in the crowd.
Yeah, 6'2", reasonably built white dude with brown hair. I mean,
Yeah.
unless you're paying attention, like really paying attention and looking for him, yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of actually. You look at Brian, you think he's really all American looking.
He is the all-American boy.
He
But
is.
here's what I'll say is that in Ohio, there's a lot of all-American
Oh,
boys.
are there really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The police started searching the area around the Ugly Tuna Saloona. They checked all the dumpsters in this kind of back alleyway. They were hoping to find any kind of clues. There were no clues whatsoever. They searched the rivers and the entire campus of Ohio State University with search dogs and didn't find anything.
So I have two questions.
Yeah.
I've not seen this. One, do we know what day garbage day was for those dumpsters? We don't. Okay.
No.
I've never seen it reported, but that's why
No,
I'm asking.
and nobody seems to know that one. There's a lot of people who theorize he wound up in a dumpster and wound up going to the dump.
That
Yeah.
happens, and sadly, to a lot of people. But my
Yeah.
other question is, because we get just basted about this, what kind of search dogs did they use?
Yeah,
to-
like cadaver dogs versus
No.
sniffer dogs
Right.
versus
It was tracker dogs.
Yeah.
We know that for sure? For, fairly
I'm-
certainly?
I would say, yeah, within a reasonable.
I when I was looking, I could never figure it out, and because we
The reason that I presume that is because they also, I was going to save this for a little later, but they also searched, they had the dogs come in and sniff around the bar to see if they could track Brian from the bar, and they were unable to do that.
because they got sidetracked by the jerky martinis.
Probably,
Yeah.
yeah. But so I presume they used the right kind of dogs.
Okay,
Although
I would
presume
assume.
so as well. But
I had heard some rumor later, though, that they came back later. There was a construction site right next door, and then one of the theories is he fell into a big
We'll
hole.
talk about that in a little bit.
But they came back with cadaver dogs and supposedly got a hit there.
Oh, I
But again, you
hadn't
hear a
heard
lot of
that.
stuff.
Yeah, that's,
I mean,
yeah. I
again,
hadn't heard
super
that,
popular
but-
case.
Yeah. So they didn't find anything. Then the police decided, well, there is some surveillance footage,
All over
I guess.
town.
Well, and also specifically in the Ugly Tuna Saloona entryway. Therefore, I guess we can, sit an investigator in here and to review the 12 hours of video surveillance footage to see if they can see anything worthwhile. So we'll pause here because I don't think that we've described how the Ugly Tuna Saloon is set up.
This is really important.
It is actually
this
very
case
important.
Was dumb to me until I figured out
Yes.
how the ugly tuna
Yeah,
saloon was
it
organized.
is really, really important. And the reason that I say this is because eventually the investigators were able to even see where Brian, Clint, and Meredith had parked, how they walked from the parked car, like even to the point of which of the support beams they walked past, up through a little corridor area.
Fully track their
They could track them all the way into the Ugly Tuna Saloon, but there were no surveillance cameras in the Ugly Tuna Saloon.
Yeah,
So
but they actually did touch the street. It's not like they parked in a parking garage and came through the back door into the mall and into the bar, right?
they didn't
actually
touch
had
a
to-
street. So there's
They
a
came through the mall area then?
well.